Awesome. So after repeated attempts to actually sit down with this person, she's honestly one of my favorite people on LinkedIn. Some of her posts are prerogative, and some of them are really catchy. Like some of them I'll be like, "Ooh, that's a bit extreme," and then you think about it, I'm like, okay, but she's got a point. And a lot of what I've actually enjoyed with these videos is I've gotten a chance to sit down with some people that sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't agree with them, but they're on a very interesting path in terms of their careers and their businesses. And I want to get their side of the story. I want to understand what they are thinking and some of the things that I could potentially learn, and hopefully even if someone else might also learn from them. And so today I have like this huge opportunity to sit down with Prenessa. And if you're not following her on LinkedIn, we'll probably have like a link somewhere. Her posts are amazing. Like she really talks a lot about leadership, some of the things that they're experiencing in their marketing space. It's been amazing. Like I really enjoy her content. And yeah, without further ado, Prenessa, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tabiso. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your kind words. I think it's also testament to all of the people who have contributed to my growth and who have mentored me. Hopefully that's a win for them too.
Well, awesome. And I hope a lot of people will actually be able to glean from all of that knowledge that you've actually gained from them. And so essentially what I try to do with this is I try to reverse engineer the success you've already achieved. And I know, I mean, you're still young and whatnot. You might not feel like you've actually done a lot, but for someone who is perhaps at the very beginning stages of their career, or even in their learning, fresh out of high school or whatever else, they are not sure of where to actually to start, you know. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do with these videos is they might perhaps catch that one piece of information that could say, oh, okay, I think I might see something I might be able to do. And so I think we're going to start there. I'm with you in high school.
Okay, so
Prenessa?
High school, believe it or not, really wasn't that. I mean, I was outspoken, but you kind of had to provoke me a little bit. I was more withdrawn, right? Okay. I like my sport. It's like I would play soccer. So my team was kind of, you know, my team. Yeah. And I think the camaraderie there was great. And what I also learned is just how to compromise in the right places. Sometimes it's just, you know, people talk about you need to learn to compromise. I think the timing of that compromise is everything and the context around it. So high school also is very lucky to be at a school where my teachers were like bonus parents. And I still keep in touch with many of them, you know, some of them who have passed on. It's really felt like a loss, like a tragic loss of someone who's genuinely cared about me and seen potential in me. Everybody, you know, if you have one good teacher, they stick with you for the rest of your life. And I was so fortunate that I had many good teachers. So the school system, the school structure was just absolutely lovely. You know, we were encouraged to be independent, to be critical thinkers, to not always just blindly agree with everything. Yeah. We were encouraged to challenge. And so I did a lot of that. And there's a lot of, you know, the resources from that high school period that shaped me, gave me affirmations that I was doing the right thing by, you know, not saying trust, but verify, right? It's that I was doing the right thing. I have always been someone to not worry so much about opinions of other people. I found that because I could read and write long before preschool, like I'm talking 1.5, 2 years old, I got very bored very quickly with people my age. I used to almost get frustrated that people couldn't function at my level in a conversation. And I'm sure at some points it just made me really rude and unapproachable. And that's probably why I was more reserved. You would find me, you know, hanging out more with the guys and playing soccer or kind of cricket during break than being with the girls and talking about other people and what they did and the gossip. That just really wasn't my scene. It never has been. Family environment also, just always talking about history and politics. Social environment, socioeconomics, what's going on, you know, we actually really used to look at the price of food and what's affecting it, and fuel, and politics, what's happening, how do you make informed choices, how not to be apathetic. That was really important. And the lesson that my grandfather taught me, which I'll carry for the rest of my life, is that when you are, when you are hurt, it's most of the time it's humans who hurt you. Your books will never betray you. Your books will never insult you. Every bit of energy that you invest, every bit of mental capacity that you invest into a book is going to pay you back tenfold in a very good way. Whereas if you focus on the people who are hurting you, and sometimes you'll never understand why they're doing it. You just won't, no matter how hard you try. Sometimes they don't even understand why they're doing it. So it's not why you were put on this earth. So rather, kind of, if you have that choice, focus on books, expand your horizons, think differently, go and embrace opposing views, do it through the form of books first. So you actually learn how to receive different opinions, and then bring that into your space with people. So kind of towards the end of high school, I realized I was never going to get the chance to actually have scheduled time to go and swim and to run on the field and do cross country or play volleyball. Like, I just threw myself at everything in matric in that last year. I must be the only person I know that didn't go for extra tuition. I've always been a person who I made my own homework if I didn't have any. I like to keep my mind occupied. I just love learning. I didn't learn to pass the exam. I learned to absorb the knowledge. There's always good advice that my dad gave me. So yeah, I think high school was a bit of a turning point, a bit of a transformational period for me, socially speaking, and where I really kind of found, a bit of who I am and what I stand for in the world. That was a good thing.
Awesome. And so I think a lot of people tend to, at the very end of matric, try to pour themselves into that. But it sounds like even before that, there was already this, I can almost say, an environment of actual learning. Are your parents academics? I'm hearing your grandfather talk about books and whatever. Are your parents actual academics or not?
No, so I am a third generation South African Indian. So my great grandparents didn't really have an education. They were laborers, and women weren't really educated. My grandmother, she was telling me a story, and one way it broke my heart, another way it really inspired me. She kind of went up to grade 3, and then she had to work on the farm, her family's farm. And even with my mom, although she she proceeded to do her NQF, she's accredited now. She's highly respected in her field right now, and she's in logistics and HR. My dad also, he sacrificed a lot. He used to tell us stories about so my dad lost his dad when he was, I think, 11 years old. And that meant he was, as the older brother, one of 6, he became dad to everybody. He was naturally disciplined, and he worked 4 jobs to keep the roof over everyone's head. He and my uncle slept under the kitchen table. There was only one room. He put himself through school, and he valued education, genuinely valued education. He saw that education was the path out of that, that yes, you're born into a life that you have no control over, but what you do when you're here, you have full control over. And he's been a bedrock of inspiration for me, because he set the terms of his own development, right? So I watched as a child, even when I'm not ashamed in any way to say this, when I was a child, we didn't even have a toilet. My dad built a wooden toilet for us, and we didn't have a geyser. We were heating water on the stove or with an element, I'm so privileged to have experienced that, because it gives me an appreciation of what so many other people in South Africa are going through, and that they still have to deal with all the modern contemporary issues of trying to build a career and put food on the table. And so with me, actually hearing about it is one thing, being part of the conversation is another, but actually watching someone make good choices, disciplined choices, choosing not to kind of go out drinking on a Friday, sit and read the newspaper. It's a small decision, but it has a big impact, when done over time. I got to see discipline in action. I got to see what it was like. And I got to see ethical business decisions being made. My dad, throughout his career as a chartered accountant, not really having a frame of reference, he didn't have his dad around, and they weren't, as Indians, we weren't, a lot of us, big professionals back then. So who do you talk to? Who do you turn to? You are going through trial and error to build your life. And I watched the payoff of that. And so I applied a lot of it in my own my own way. I'm 30 years old today. One of the things I've never done is been tipsy. I've never put a cigarette to my lips. I haven't even been curious about it. I remember, I think I got into an argument with one friend who put the cigarette near my lips. And just like a reflex, I was just like, I just moved like this and I ended up slapping him. It was a mistake, but he'll never forget that. And he's never tried to put a cigarette to my lips after that. No one has. I make the rules for my life, you know, my terms. And it's been difficult for me being culturally, you know, there's kind of like the 6,000 years of culture with me being of Tamil descent. And in South Africa as well, like I'm exposed to all this modernity and Western politics and Western education systems. And it's very different. It was a bit of a culture shock when we moved to a different neighborhood and we kind of moved out of the Indian area. And suddenly I was faced with just a whole new way of experiencing life. And so these pockets, these little environments kind of throughout my life, I've just been hyper vigilant. I've been, you know, very observant my whole life. So sometimes people don't even know that they've taught me something. They've taught me through the actions that I've watched, not necessarily sitting me down and having a conversation or like a classroom style session. It was really just looking at, I never had an interest in, you know, I mean, yes, I had a couple of dolls, but like I didn't have this interest in the typical kind of 2 to 4-year-old girl stuff. You know, I wanted books as presents. And if they weren't books to read, they were books to write in. They were learning how to practice my spelling. I would fight with my dad to get me, you know, those kinds of presents. So yeah, looking back at that, I think I was always encouraged within my family to apply my mind. And I knew that I would also be a generational turning point. You know, after me now, I'm the first female kind of, you know, looking through the generations to have tertiary education, to have a proper bachelor's degree. And you understand when you go through this and you have those conversations, just how much it means to the rest of your family, why it's so significant that you hold something like a bachelor's degree. You know, I want to just be an example for other kids, for other children, other Indian females coming up through the ranks. It's to say your circumstances you are born into don't define you. Your attitude to learning is most probably going to get you so much further than who you know or what you know when you start a new position.
Yeah. And do you feel that? Like, do you actually feel like the weight of that history and some sense of responsibility to those sacrifices?
I do, but I know that it's my choice. I don't think that anyone else has put that choice on me. I think, yes, to a certain degree, there's an expectation and there's always this want that the next generation will do better. You know, the reason you sacrifice is for the next generation to do better. If I look at, like I said, my dad working 4 jobs as a child to put himself through school, to, you know, look after his siblings and his mom, and keep things together. He had to learn very quickly, you know, and you look at, like, even with my granny, not being able to go to school. I mean, she loved it so much. And you just had to go back and work on the family farms. She was literate. And she loved reading the newspaper, because now I understand why she always read the newspaper and why getting the newspaper was so important to her, because there was just a little escapism, right? Actually getting the chance to read, it was a privilege. And so I think I probably take it on as a moral responsibility more so than it is imposed upon me. And I think that is why it works so well for me. It's because it motivates me, it inspires me, it sits within me, and the people around me can sense that it's authentic that way.
Yeah. I think there's a friend of mine, I actually sat down, he was the first guest on when I started doing these videos, Pillar. And I've made sense of it, because I feel a similar sense of responsibility towards those that have come before me. Was when you go through adolescence, and this is how I've made sense of it, when you go through adolescence, you try to figure out who you are separated from your parents. So you try to find the clique that you're a part of and whatnot. And I was like, but as you begin to get out of adolescence and now you're maturing, you start to realize that you're not all that separated from your parents. You are actually, in large part, a continuation of what they are. And the things you'll achieve is part of the dreams that they were hoping for. Like a lot of the things that they see you actually doing are the very things they were hoping for. These are the very things that they were sacrificing for. And for me, it's not even a sense that's, like you said, it's not like it's a thing that's imposed on you. I think it's Robert Greene who talks about this. It's like, there's a generation of pioneers, and they're the ones that actually build up, let's say, an empire. And then there's the generation that grows up seeing the sacrifices being made. And that generation generally will feel a sense of responsibility to the sacrifices that have been made. But then there's the next generation that didn't see the sacrifices that went into this, but they grew up on the stories. And they might have a bit of a sense, but it's not that visceral compared to the person that grew up seeing the sacrifices themselves. And then generally you have that fourth generation that don't even grow up with the stories at all. They have no sense of how all of this actually came into being. They have no idea why is it that we do things the way that we do them. And generally the assumption is, okay, this is outdated, we need to change everything, because they have no context of why do we do things the way that we do them, and why have they worked this long, And I guess it's the fallacy of just being young, where you believe that you've got everything figured out and all of you are stupid. I know how we should change everything. But that's not always the case. That's really not always the case. But a lot of the people that are, give or take, our age, I'm seeing a similar take from them, where they feel the sense of essentially responsibility to really show up in a big way, and they're really doing that. Like I really find that quite interesting. And this is where your story gets really interesting to me now, is that you have the sense of responsibility, you leave high school, and then you go to varsity. But that doesn't go to plan, according to plan.
Yep. But in a good way. You don't feel it in the moment, but in a good way. You realize, the universe has plans for you. And I think, again, like I say, culturally, a lot of us as children and people of color, whether, you're a child or you're an adult, as a person of color, you're often presented with just 4 orthodox career opportunities: law, engineering, medicine, or accounting.
Yeah.
And, God forbid you choose something that is not an orthodox career option, which is why for a very long time, people didn't understand that the creative industries like movies, you could actually only find white people to cast. It wasn't actually entirely the industry's fault.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was a lot of influence that culture had over that. And it was taboo to want to be a chef or to want to be, and it still is today in India and in most of Africa. It is still, you find, our parents are in their 50s, 60s, and they still have that traditional view of the world, that you go to school, you get good grades, you use the opportunity to pursue tertiary, and it has to be an orthodox profession. Yeah. Yes, you can kind of, if you strike it lucky and you make money doing something that you enjoy, yes, you're lucky, but don't count on that. Have a backup plan. That's from the risk-averse generation. And so the options were quite limited, right? In everybody kind of grows up and thinks this is the only way. But I knew that I wanted to get out of Durban. I focused on UCT, and I just thought I needed to be there. I worked my rear end off to get into architecture. And I thought, that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't really want to do architecture. I didn't want to be an architect. I wanted to be someone who worked with creating spaces that transformed the state of human emotion when people entered into them. And at the same time, even through high school, I've always had this intent to make enough money in my life to fund housing, schools, and hospitals. I wanted to support architects. They have the knowledge, they've studied for 10 years. And I never liked that people with purse strings usually made decisions, that all decisions based on, the buildings I would see around me were because somebody with money or somebody controlling the money said, do it my way or else the money is going. Yeah. I just unsee the ethics and integrity in it. So, a lot of my life philosophy kind of came into play there. But I did my best. I went in, I did my best. And I was very blessed in the sense that, I was living in an apartment on my own. So like I didn't have annoying roommates and stuff like that with house parties. But at the same time, I didn't have human interaction, which I'd always had previously. And I didn't have a car. I didn't have the ability to go and do my seva and my community outreach and volunteer. That was a huge part of everything that I was. My dad and I would spend Christmas Day, every Christmas Day in the morning going to serve breakfast. And kids from an orphanage in the neighborhood where I grew up would be bussed into a school hall. And there would be tons of us from the community, like actually cooking and serving breakfast and cleaning up. And it was so lovely to be there and to be appreciated for the little contribution that you're making, So I started developing depression and anxiety, and I realized quite quickly that I can't talk to anybody about this, because also a massive part of our culture and our heritage as people of color is suck it up, buttercup. You've got work to do. You can't be worrying about your feelings, and so nobody that I was related to really knew how to deal with that or how to support me. And I think I was looking for support in the wrong places, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just misalignment. But, at that age, at 17, I matriculated at 17. So moving away at 17, what did I know about anxiety and mental health and all of those things? It wasn't a conversation you had. It's certainly not openly. You'd have them in secret with your best friend or writing a diary type of thing. You wouldn't talk about it to human beings. And so I hit a point where I couldn't physically get out of bed. The 1 week, I think the combination of depression and just stress and lack of sleep and trying to be perfect for everyone else around me all the time, it really, really got to me. And I was diagnosed with bronchitis, laryngitis, pharyngitis, and pneumonia at the same time. I physically couldn't move. I couldn't pick my hand up like this. I had a friend who had a spare key to my apartment. Thank God for him. I was supposed to meet him or see him somewhere, and people know that I'm punctual. So he got worried and he phoned me, and I had just enough energy to answer the call, and I couldn't speak because I didn't really have a voice. So I was like trying to, do I text? Do I speak? He actually went and got me soup and then used the spare key to come into the house, and he had to kind of help me and feed me because I didn't have any energy. And that's when I realized, no matter how much your relatives love you, they're not always going to be there for you. It's not their fault, but they're not always going to be there for you when you really flipping need them, And it made me think that, maybe the experiences I've had in my life, maybe there's something to this. There's something to this, that this person who I don't think really owes me anything, went out of his way, kind of paused what he was doing at that point, and went to go and get me something to eat, came back and prioritized me. No strings attached, no expectations, just good, pure friendship, like wanting good things for you. Yeah. And later that year, just again, I think probably because of the depression, anxiety as well, just the cycle of I wasn't living a healthy lifestyle. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't asking for help with anything because I believed that I had to be perfect the way that I was. Yeah. And I had to meet, somebody else's standards. I didn't even know whose half the time that I had to be perfect. And I failed for the first time in my life. I'd been a distinction student, kind of 90% averages in some places, and I failed. I saw an F next to my design major in second year. And it completely shattered me. And at that point, my dad is someone who I've always looked up to academically and in terms and professionally. And he crushed me because he said, you just didn't work hard enough. I sat there, I think, for 2 or 3 months. And I think these words will never leave me. And it was, you're in this beautiful flat and you have everything that you need. And you don't have half the worries that other people have. You just didn't work hard enough. And it triggered something inside me. And I still didn't talk about it at this time, but it triggered something inside me that said, watch this space, challenge accepted. And in one way it was healthy, in one way it wasn't. So the next year I went back to repeat the two majors that I had, well, one major that I had failed, but you can't take the second major without having the first one. So went back to UCT to take that course and kind of really, I as much as I possibly could. I mean, I was working 24/7 some weeks, and I put my head down and I worked harder. And the guy who was the moderator the previous year happened to work for the Cape Town branch of a company where I was shadowing as a student. And he nearly cost us a deal at that time, working on a very important institution. And I told them, please blame me. It was a September holiday in my third year. I was doing my third year minors and retaking my second year majors. But I also decided that, yeah, I'm going to live for me. I'm going to go out there and find, something to do that I love, that's creative. And I started offering photography sessions on the side. I had a little SLR camera, and I used to use it to take my pictures on site visits at buildings for academic purposes. And I just put a little ad on Gumtree and I said, if you want photos, here it is. And I had some experience kind of working with fashion modeling. When I was actually at school in grade 4, I took a formal model coaching class. And so a lot of those lessons stood with me.
Yeah.
And I said, how do I kind of just share what I know, but in a way that's enjoyable for me too? And so I got a model as a client, and I was doing his portfolio, and I had access to beautiful spaces on campus, doing his portfolio, and then his mom got sick. And this is kind of in line with my third year now. So where I am working hard, but I'm also I'm sneaking around doing things that make me happy. They don't hurt anybody, but they're making me happy. But if I had to tell anyone, that would be considered not working hard enough. And I was just like, no, this is my space. I deserve it. I'm going to be happy. And so with the client, his mom got sick. And she needed a surgery. They didn't have the cash flow for it. And I said to him, why don't I help you? Like you want to be a model. I can teach you, how to do a runway, and you can get some of your friends together in the neighborhood, and we can put a little fashion show together and sell the tickets. And you can take 50% of whatever it is we make towards your mom's surgery. And I'll take 50% for an NPO. I'll go and find a registered NPO and I'll donate. If we do make anything, I'll be able to give from there. So I also started contributing my student allowance to that, right? I was getting some money from my dad every month to survive because I wasn't living at home. And I started living off baked beans. I reached out to an NPO, and every spare cent that I had, like I was literally eating low GI bread with baked beans on it. That was life, because I couldn't tell anyone, and I didn't feel like I could make myself vulnerable enough to tell someone. So I found an NPO and I started kind of going through this program and creating it. And that's actually how Creative Angels Fashion Benefit was born. Okay. That guy dropped out of the process, and I had already advertised and I had already marketed this thing. And I thought, well, what now? Yeah. Okay, I guess maybe 100% of whatever comes out of this is going to go to the NPO. And they had letters of authenticity and all of this good stuff. It's credible, it's above board. And again, my naivety, I was going into this, not knowing what I'm doing. All I know is I've been through a couple of years of architecture, and I did really well at high school. What does that count in the real world? I mean, who's going to employ me because of that, Yeah. So I kind of transferred the skills. And in third year, I learned to live for myself. And it was the most exhilarating feeling. And it didn't make me a worse daughter. It didn't make me a bad person. It didn't kind of, I don't know what the words are really, but I mean, it really didn't end the world for anybody. Yeah. Me living for myself. And, it was always kind of believed before that point, before that third year, it was always believed by me that if I am not in this lane perfectly, like if I am not coloring within the lines here, yeah, the world is going to end. Like I absolutely have to be perfect here. And it was my first experience that I didn't need to be. And I looked at failure in a different way, and I picked myself up from that really dark space, because I realized that at that point, there weren't people in my life who I could turn to who would understand and then actually, help me with that process. So I self-therapized. And this space, Creative Angels Fashion Benefit, became a space where suddenly people were responding really well to me. And the key turning point in that first stint at varsity was I got an email from a young lady who attended our photo shoot. And she said to me that basically her experience that day prevented her from taking her life.
Wow.
And I cried like a little baby when I read that thing. And I couldn't believe it because I thought, oh my God, like for me, this is a life or death situation. I'm not telling my dad where my student allowance is going. I'm trying to balance lectures with meeting people to run a brand. And, I'm managing a team of volunteers who are starting a Facebook page. And at that time, Facebook pages were new also, you were the bee's knees if you had a Facebook page.
Yeah.
And there was so much going on in my life. I just felt like, okay, I wasn't sleeping before. I was hardly sleeping now, but at least I was happier. Like it was a big lever that kind of got more. And knowing that the risk I took saved a life, actually having it in front of me in black and white, I don't know what it was. It's like this at the very center of you is like where you feel your soul really radiates energy from. And sometimes when you get these gut feelings, they call them, from there, I felt this gut feeling, this moral responsibility to keep whatever this thing was going.
Yeah.
Because I didn't need anybody else to see that. This person knew that this intervention and experience saved her life. She attributed it.
Yeah.
And today she's qualified as a dentist. She is paying her own rates. She's educated herself through money that she earned from modeling because of what we taught her.
Wow.
So that showed me that actually there is more to creative and performing arts than people think there is. This is life-saving, life-changing stuff. This opens doors of opportunity and will keep children away off the streets, away from drugs, away from gangs. Because the reason children are going there is because that's where they feel loved. I felt alone at that point, and not because my family were, not wanting to support me. They couldn't. They literally had no tools to come to me and say, I want to support you through this emotional gauntlet you are going through. Yeah. None of them had a clue what I was going through. And I didn't know how to communicate it. But in the space, I could openly love people for who they were and not judge them for anything they did outside, but say to them and set the bar in terms of discipline and integrity and say, hey, you're only going to be able to say that I'm on your side if you don't ever hurt anybody else again. You really got to look at, like, you don't need matric for that. You know when you're hurting somebody else, right? The look on their face will tell you. Their actions will tell you, if somebody's crying because of you and they're sad, that's a signal. You've done something wrong. You've hurt them. That's an opportunity for you to go and, make amends. Say, I'm sorry for my part in that and move on, So varsity for me kind of ended in Cape Town after that third year because I failed again. The guy who was the moderator in second year nearly caused a bank crash boom in the company where I was shadowing as well. I saved him by saying, I said to the CEO, I said, please, I don't know what time this meeting is, but put me on that machine, put me on that project, and I will work through it. The clients can come to my desk and they can have a look, stand over my shoulder, look at the designs. And we can say that the design took a long time to complete because the student is working on it. So this particular drawing is not ready right now so yes, it's out there. Everybody knows I told a white lie, but for a good cause. And I tried to kind of configure the truth around it by actually working on the designs, right? And then trying to finish what was there. Yeah. So I saved the company from losing the project because I didn't know that they weren't the nice. I only found out after that. The moderator wasn't happy. I think there was some disciplinary issues around that after that because the moderator of my exam was the guy who was meant to have done the drawings. And so it just happened that he failed me again, even though my aggregate was higher and I had not failed anything during the year. So my aggregate increased by 10%. And at the end of that third year, I remember standing with one of my good friends and classmates, and I was looking at the results, and I didn't feel good about it. I actually wanted to fail because I knew that if I passed, oh my God, I was going to have to go through this for one more year. So it was like, universe, you've gifted me this thing, in CAFB. I don't know what it is, but it works and it's doing good things and it makes me happy. Take me closer to that. I prayed really hard about it. And when I saw that F after third year, I rejoiced. And my friend thought, she asked me, she was quite short, and so she was standing on a chair, and she looked at me, she said, did you pass? And I said, no, I didn't. I failed. And she's now really disturbed by this. So she puts her hand over my forehead, and she says, she looks at the thing, she's like, oh my, darling, I'm sorry, no, did you hear yourself? It's a fail. It's an F. And she's feeling bad for me. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm free. And I remember hugging her and picking her up off the chair and just like bear hugging her. I was so happy. I could just feel all of this joy that I would never have to spend a day being miserable, doing something that anybody else thought I should be doing. I don't know what was going to come, but I just knew it wasn't going to be misery. And that was enough for me. So I was told to move back to Durban. And I had to come, I came back here, and my brother registered me at Varsity College. It was the last kind of college that was still available for registrations in Feb. My lecturers were all at UCT trying to tell me, do I want to appeal this thing? I'm so close. I'm 75% of the way there. I can put a good, strong case together, and I can do this. I can get help. I can go to summer school. They can help me and support me if I want to complete this thing. And I was like, I don't, but I don't. I know what I want to do, and it's sustainability. It's not this. I don't want to be here, and I don't think I should be here. At some point in my life at 16 years old, I made a mistake about what I should be doing. I've gotten valuable skills in presentation, in art, motor skills, and there's so much value that architecture has taught to me, appreciation of the environment as well. But I don't think this is where I'm meant to be. And I appreciate the support. And if I do ever feel like I'm making a mistake now, I will come back and speak to you, and we can put the appeal together. Lecturers were so supportive of that. And I enrolled in a BA in corporate communication here in Durban. And for me, the rest is history. I used that degree to keep building what I call the UFO, a social UFO. We were just doing good things. We were a group of good people. I remember being so scared. I sat in a queue at SARS for 2 hours to say, I'm opening a new bank account. This is what I want to do. I'm not taking a salary from it. How does tax work? Please help me. Because I was still kind of shy of going to my dad about it. Years down the line, plenty of mistakes down the line, I was always then kind of studying full-time and then running this thing full-time and learning on the fly how to build a website, how to run a campaign, how to present to people, how to lead and manage people, how to do production, how to do project management, event marketing, everything kind of, I threw myself in the deep end over those 10 years. And today, like, my dad is my biggest fan. I have, people in his social circle tell me, your dad's really proud of you. He told me the story about you guys when you took him to this hotel and you had this beautiful fashion show and there were kids dancing and, it was a celebration. I was like, wow, dad doesn't say that to me. I mean, he tells me he's proud of me, but like, it's that reserved, pride. It's like, I can't be too proud of her. What if I give her an ego, So it's like there's so much, there's an abundance of love today. There's an abundance of good things in my life. And it all started because in high school, in varsity, I took a decision to set my own terms for the decisions that I make. That's really where that's the foundation of everything.
Yeah, like, sure, you've said a lot. And I've actually had this conversation with about 2 or 3 other females as well. And I mean, being a guy, I guess I can't really make sense of it. There seems to be this almost cloud of responsibility that females tend to feel that perhaps guys don't feel. And I remember one time, so my wife's a doctor, and I can't remember the conversation we're having, but then we're talking about whether she wants to specialize or not and all of that. And after having when we spoke for an extended period of time, and I ended up saying to her, listen, you don't owe womanhood anything. Like, you're a doctor right now. you've literally achieved more than what most people, never mind females, people will achieve in their lifetimes. If you feel like you've done enough, then like, why is that a problem? You know, and if you want to continue, then continue. You know, like the idea that we've got young kids and whatever, it's like, it's irrelevant. We've got a helper, we've got all of these other things. Like,
yes,
you know, it doesn't bother me. Like the fact that you work at night and whatever, it doesn't really bother me. You know, so don't go and do that in the name of perhaps being a good mom or being a good wife and all that, because these kids are going to grow up. They're going to go out and do their own thing. Like they're not going to come back and say, thank you for not specializing. You know? You know? And she cried on that day. Like she really cried. Like, and she came back and said, you know what? I always thought I had to do these things. I'm like, why? You know, like in no shape or form have you ever been told you could do something else? And there's one thing that she always comes back and says, that she's like, I didn't know I actually had a choice. You know, and a friend of mine who's also female, I had a similar conversation with her. I was also relaying the same story. And she also says the same thing. It's like, I actually didn't know I had a choice. Like I've always felt like this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm failing every other female that is out there by not grinding hard, by not doing this. I'm like, how about you just be happy? I feel like you'll do a lot. You know, and I cannot lie to you and say I understand it. But it seems as though, especially from those that actually are already achieving a lot, they will still end up feeling like they're not doing enough. Is that a feeling that you actually share as well? And how do you actually manage that emotion?
I have, and it's been different in its intensity through each phase of my life. More so in my younger years, also kind of, like I say, you observe a woman's place, and you observe. And so, you know, when I was a child, before my parents got divorced, my mom did all of the cooking. She did all of the cleaning. Dad's clothes were ironed and neatly laid out on the bed, which was made. You know, all he had to do was wake up, go into the bathroom, and then kind of come out, and it was done for him. And then also dad did all the providing financially. So, you know, those were very traditional Orthodox roles. The way you grow up, and I think it was something that I read somewhere, and I've heard it a couple of times, that children will imitate you before they listen to what you're saying, process it, and do what you're asking them to do. That is why the quickest way to align a child's behavior with your desired behavior is to show them. Because they'll imitate you. And in my family as well, my grandmother and my grandfather, same kind of situation. So my grandfather was a tailor. He was an MC. He worked in creative and performing arts. And I think that's where, you know, it's in my blood, I say. And my granny would do all of the cooking. And so the tending to all of the, you know, the garden with all the vegetables and stuff that we were growing, my granny would do all of that. Everything kind of home-based was a woman's role, and everything finance-based was man's role. And you grow up and you think that's the way it's meant to be. No one's questioning this. No one's challenging this. There are no conversations, no resources out there about anything being different. However, my mother, I mean, she's the reason that I could read and write before many people my age. I went into preschool getting into so much trouble because I was so bored half the time, because kids couldn't function and have a conversation. And then the teacher would make me read stories every day, those little ladybird books. And then the other kids would hate me because, I mean, like, oh, she's a show-off, she can read, you know, we're all stupid now. And I felt for those kids. And so I would actually take long to do my work on purpose. And the teacher, she didn't care that corporal punishment was illegal. She would twist my ears. She would be like, I know you can finish faster than this, you know, you need to do your reading. And it was crazy because the weight of, I'm going to say patriarchy, right? But a lot of people, I believe, use this word very loosely. I feel like it also vilifies males. And I don't think that patriarchy is a system. It's a school of thought. It's everybody who subscribes to it, whether they're conscious about it or not. They subscribe to this belief that this is the way things ought to be. And you live in this box and you live in this box. But my parents always challenged me because I was intellectually able to absorb more, to process it quickly, and to deliver outputs that were just way beyond my years. my parents kind of encouraged that. So my mother she gave me that, that ability to kind of say, okay, your teacher didn't give you homework today. Doesn't mean you don't have homework.
Yeah.
And she would actually create exams for me out of my notes. She would take an exam pad and start writing questions, take my study guide and look and say, like, I'm going to give you a mock exam and you're going to prepare for your exam. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to set your exam before you write the exam. Yeah. That was how I prepared. So I had a really good influence at home about how to approach. And then I saw my dad actually doing the things that my mother was telling me to do. There was synchronicity there between, you know, what you're being told and what someone is actually doing. And that really helped. I don't think a lot of people have access to that. So that was a big thing. It created a lot of expectation that I placed on myself, not just as a female, but as a person, for how perfect I had to be. Then when I started even at work, I would just take on things that were completely out of scope of work, because I felt I needed to prove myself, because traditionally there weren't a lot of women in the roles or the industries that I was working in. But my father always said to me, I don't care what it is you choose to do, but you will be the best at it. You will be the best at it, because the day an employer mistreats you, you look them in the eye and you say, thank you very much for the opportunities. I think this is where our paths need to split. And you know, I need to move on and find my worth elsewhere. So it was a conflicting, right? Because I would feel weight that I took on myself. Nobody put it there. I took it on because of the way I observed things. And then I had this narrative saying, you can do anything. You can be anything. Go do it. I was in a school that really helped me expose myself to all things cultural, all things sport. I was so blessed that I even got to go overseas on a trip with the art students and see different cultures and experience things with my friends in a social container, not just, you know, a family container. The weight, I think, comes from nobody having these conversations with us. You know, it makes sense to me that you've said to your wife, it doesn't matter to me. Why are we having this conversation? Like, it doesn't even make sense, because you never had this expectation. It's like, where's this coming from? And it's coming from what we've observed as kids. So what I'm expecting is that in my generation, where women are leaders, for the first time, some of us don't have a frame of reference. I can't go to another female in my family and say, when you started your business, what did you do? I can do that with my dad, because, you know, that's traditionally been the way to do it. But my nieces will be able to come to me and say, when you started your business, how did you do it? You know, we can have this conversation with the next generation. So I do think that the weight will reduce over time, but I think it's going to take a conscious effort from everybody, from people. It's not just women, it's from people, to have these conversations and say, okay, how do you see the world? That's all it takes. That's the one question, that's all it takes, right? And it changes your perspective. And suddenly you realize there's this elephant in the room. How have I missed it? You know, it's been there all along. We just haven't acknowledged it. We've been turning in the other direction, pretending it'll go away, and it's not going to. So I think from that point of view, you know, in terms of managing it, I've invested a lot in therapy in the last few years, especially mental health, embracing it and saying that it's okay to not be okay every minute of every day. It's okay. If that's what you need for a short while, it's okay to not be okay. And, you know, I used to have the saying for the fashion shows, because live events, you know, I mean, that's always fun. Murphy's Law, good old Murphy visits you all the time. And so I used to say to these guys, you know what? I'm going to use my age to my advantage, right? And I'm going to use the fact that I'm female to my advantage. I was working in fashion and entertainment, where it's a very female-dominated industry, but I had masculine qualities about me. Like, I was trained for leadership. I was groomed to think like a leader and challenge thoughts. So I brought that into that space, and I started teaching other females and saying, it's okay to challenge me. I consciously strive to bring that narrative into my team today. As a leader and an MD, I'm saying, I need you to challenge me. Can you not? It's intimidating to work for me. I know that, because I've been in this game for 10 years. And actually, in 10 years, I've amassed 20 years of experience, because I was working full time. I was studying full time. I was running a business. You know, it was a give what you can with what you have, but I was working around the clock. So I've got all of this knowledge and experience, but I learned the hard way. You know, I didn't have a me to say, challenge me. I've also had male superiors who have made me feel less than human. And so this is the part where lots of people get curious when they're watching this, and they'll go look at my LinkedIn profile and be like, ooh, I don't know who that is. The companies are not on my profile for a reason. I also want to respect them. Whether or not they deserve it is a different discussion, but I don't want to bring anybody down. That's my ethos, right? And I don't want people kind of coming to me to know, oh, who's not good enough. You know, I just want to highlight the good in the world, and that's what we need. And managing this has been about confronting it directly. I have had male superiors openly screaming at my female colleagues in a work environment. I've looked that person in the eye and said, whatever message it is you need to give me, I will receive it on one condition. You will not scream at my colleagues, nor will you scream at me. You will not scream at them in front of me. It's not negotiable. I bruised his ego, clearly bruised his ego enough that after committing to a contract, he revoked the contract and said, no, perhaps we need some other skill set. And I looked him again in his eye, remembering all the while what my dad said to me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I stood up and I stuck my hand out and I said, no hard feelings. I mean, I loved it here. I love the staff. I love the products. This is awesome. Thank you for this experience. And it caught him off guard so badly. He expected me to grovel for the job, and I could see it because for the next month, the company's marketing was falling apart. It set the bar to say, like, you know, it's my way or the highway. I chose the highway, and I had confidence in myself because of it, because academically I knew what was sitting here and the opportunities it would open. And for other women, I feel it's important that I also set the bar. I have a female dominant team in terms of my contractors. My staff at the moment are all female. And I actively say to them, you know, you are valued, you are appreciated. I love celebrating the little things with them. I celebrate them as people as well. And I try and remove labels. We did this at CAFB, and I said, no, you're not Black, white, Indian, Chinese, whatever. You're not. You're a person. I don't even ask for their race or ethnicity on our forms because it doesn't matter in our organization, not even for research purposes, you know? So I'm consciously trying just the little things to live out that the way I want to manage it. I can't tell you that I'm perfect at managing it. I do feel imposter syndrome based on being a female. There are plenty of times in the corporate world, in the business world, even in SMMEs, where people will look at me and say, oh, that's cute what you do. You know, I've seen it with my female counterparts who are leaders. They have won awards. They've genuinely won awards, not like the type you apply for. They've genuinely been nominated by other companies. And it's heavyweight awards. And then it's not the marketing list type of thing. And they'll get comments in meetings from men that are misogynistic. And I've so many times, thank God there's a mute button, right? I have actually sworn like a sailor saying, but that's not appropriate. Why isn't that lady speaking up? And I, you know, in a debriefing after that session, I said, what's wrong with you? Why are you not speaking up? Like, you know what you're talking about. Why did you not stand up and say, actually, that's out of scope? You know, that's not in line with what we've agreed. Because why? There's 10 men on the call and you're the only female. Who's going to stand up for you, right? I'm trying to inculcate this notion that you don't need a man or a woman. You don't need somebody else to stand up for you. You are here because you are destined to be here. You deserve to be here. You have limitless human potential, whether you're a man or a woman. And the weight that is on the shoulders of women is due to the slow rate at which the world is changing. It will come. Change will come. It will be faster. Our daughters today will be in a much better position 30 years from now than we are today.
I agree. I think what the advice that your dad gave you is like, it's one of the things I say to people is that it helps that you're good at what you do. Like, it's easily the easiest source of job security. The fact that you're good at what you do, because whether something ends here, if you're good at what you do, it won't be too long before someone else says, okay, we actually need someone with that type of skill set on our team, you know, and that really helps. But one of the things I've been thinking about a lot, I think over the past 2 days, and I haven't really found a proper way to fix this, is, so I've been having a few conversations with recruiters and interviewing and whatnot. And a lot of what has come out from that is the technical people that we generally sit down with, these are the comments I've been getting from like 2 different companies. It's like the technical people we generally sit down with are not this articulate. They just care about the models, they care about the stats and whatnot. But like you actually talk about like the business impact, you talk about this, you talk about how it solved this problem and all of that. Like you really bring a lot of context to the projects that you worked on. And this isn't something that we generally see. And when I've been thinking about that, I've reached a point where I'm like, I think the technical skill is important. Your ability to talk in environments that matter is more important than your technical ability. Because before you are even given the opportunity to even showcase your skill set, you need to be able to actually talk about it. You need to be able to say, if I were to fix this, this is how I would go about fixing it. And the companies will be like, okay, it sounds like you know what you're doing. Here's X amount of money for you to actually work on that project or whatever it is that you're trying to get into. Now, where I think, and again, still, I want to stick on this thing of culture a bit. The former CEO of First Rand, Sizwe Nxasana, once said something like years ago. We had some Asaba thing at Liberty, the head offices in Bram, and he was like, part of what keeps people of color from advancing in the corporate world isn't necessarily racism, it's culture. Because your culture teaches you not to speak up against someone older than you.
Yes.
Your culture teaches you not to call out someone who does something wrong, who's older than you. And he's like, and I really loved his take, because he was like, one of the things he says to the people of color on his team is like, down there in the basement, in the parking lot, there you call me Babsizu. But as soon as we get into this elevator and we work our way up, you call me Sizwe, and it's like, because your attempts at showing respect to me culturally, to someone who's not a part of your culture, shows weakness. So it doesn't show your ability to actually lead. So when they see you talking to a let's say a colleague who's older than you, and you're saying, Bob so-and-so or mom so-and-so, they're like, okay, but now if we move this person to manager, this person's not going to be able to reprimand this individual or to even lead this team, because you are not showing that. Whereas someone else who isn't from that similar culture doesn't have those pre-notions. They aren't taught that. So they get in there, they're able to say to their older colleagues, of color or not, oh, you did this wrong. This is actually unacceptable. This is not what the company is paying for. They're talking to an external supplier. And to management, that shows leadership. Like, you are able to actually speak up.
Yes.
So now you can come back and complain. I'm like, but technically I'm better than this individual. And they're like, yeah, we get that. But the problem is that you cannot speak up.
Yes.
Like, you don't know how to speak up when you need to speak up. So in those environments where we actually need your voice, we're not going to get your voice. So we can't bring you into those environments because we're not seeing those attributes coming in from you. And I think our cultures may be different, but I think you see a similar thing even with females. Like, you're not really taught to speak up, but you're impossibly vocal. Where does that actually come from?
Definitely my mother. I would say 80% my mother, 20% my father, because my mother herself is outspoken. So I do think it's a bit of, hereditary there. Mm-hmm. But I think for her also, she had to fight very hard. For what she has today and for who she is today, she had to fight very hard. She had to work very hard. And also, at the time that my parents divorced, it was taboo to be Indian and divorced and female. It's like, you were just discarded from society type of thing. It wasn't, you had to work 10 times harder to be seen and given the same amount of opportunity as a man who is also a divorcee, because traditionally men provided. So what use was a woman who is a full-time mom, stay at home in the workplace? And prejudice, you faced it big time. For me, that outspokenness also comes from being encouraged when I did it. Yes, there were actually conflicting situations where in the extended family setting where it was very frowned upon and was a disciplinary issue where I shouldn't have said something. And I said, and I used to backchat. to my parents. Especially like, it was a big issue culturally, because I'd be like, but that doesn't make sense just because you said so. Like, why? How is that logical? Because my whole life, and you're telling me like I'm doing the maths. You are training me at the math. I'm good at maths. I'm good at logic. I'm going to ask questions. I'm a naturally curious person. I'm going to ask you questions. My grandfather was the only person who gave in to me when he would say, I don't know, let's just say as a girl, I might have been sitting on the veranda and on his little bench with him. And maybe I was, I don't know, sitting drinking Milo, but my dress had like come up. So you could see my napkin as a baby. And he would say, pull your dress down, Ma, it's not nice. But I'd say to him, why? And then he'd say, see, we are high up and someone's going to come up that pathway now, right? As you get older, you'll see, not everybody should see that about you. You understand with time, but I'm telling you for now, anybody can come up there. You don't want people seeing, what if they see your private parts? My grandfather was very open. He entrusted me with knowledge and information. And if that stretched me too far, he knew I would ask him another question. So he kept his finger on the pulse of my intellect at all times, understanding how to manage information sharing with me and then encouraging me. And then I'd actually understand and I'd say like, okay, cool. When somebody looks at me and says, because he's older than you, he's a boy, you're a girl, because I said so. Oh, every fiber of my existence just rejects that. And now that I'm old enough and I'm an adult and I'm independent and I'm, especially it's like, you live under my roof, you live under my rules. It's all of those. We've all heard it before.
Yeah.
Now I'm not afraid. I am not afraid of any consequence anybody puts in front of me. There are family members of mine who don't speak to me because that's the threat, that's a consequence, right? I'm going to withdraw my presence in your life. I'm going to withdraw my affection. I can speak about this openly, comfortably. If they ever watch this, they'll feel super uncomfortable. How dare I speak about it? I'm not saying who it is. I'm not affecting anybody else's reputation. I'm not hurting them. I'm saying it's reality. It's existed. And you know what? I'm not a poorer person for it. I'm not a weaker person for it. I just think that at this point in time, if you can't handle somebody speaking up and giving you it's feedback. If you can't handle the feedback and you don't create the container for it, none of us are mind readers. You get that kind of 1%, the genuine clairvoyance and the mediums and that type of thing. But that's not to read your mind. It's not about reading your mind. It's actually about creating a different container for a different type of communication. You mentioned that, the boardroom setting you were talking about.
Yeah.
I think I read it in a book. I think it was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So for anyone watching this, it's a resource they might want to pick up on.
Yeah.
Written in there might have been the words that manners will take you much further in life than intelligence or resources.
Yeah.
And I've practiced it and I see it. The people in my life today who are there because we have a mutual trust. We're not going to agree all the time. I don't expect you to be perfect. Don't expect that from me.
Yeah.
But I accept you as you are. And if you have an issue and you give me feedback, I'm going to help you solve it because you're a good person. That's why you're in my life. Don't be afraid to challenge me. I've said to my team a number of times, if you don't tell me that you can't deliver early enough, I can't plan. You're actually doing more damage by not talking than you are by talking about it early enough. Don't come at the 11th hour and say, I can't deliver. Some people, and I said it's female dominant team, they need support with this, right? With these containers. But we're practicing every day. We have a communication container. Every week I do virtual coffee with my team and myself and the ladies get together. We laugh, we talk, we laugh at me. If we dry on humor, well, let's laugh at me. I'll tell you something stupid I did this week. We do that so people get comfortable with the idea of me being a human first, then being the boss, or then being the authoritative figure. I'm a human being first, and by default, that means I'm not going to be better than you as a person. And that should even the score a little bit and allow people to feel a little bit comfortable. But I also heard once that people need reminding for remembering. So that is why I kind of bring that repetition and consistency into it. I encourage other people to speak out. And by default, the people who don't like it will weed themselves out of business and life.
I agree. So it's interesting now because you've been on one end where you are a part of an organization, but now you're running your own business. I don't think we'll get into the struggles of that, but you're actually running a team now. What are the things that you learned from perhaps seeing some of the leaders that you were actually reporting to, or someone else was reporting to, both good and bad, that you took with you and said, one day when I'm leading my own team, that's not something I want to do, versus, okay, that's actually quite good. The day I'm leading my own team, that is something I definitely want to do.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because like I said, I mean, when I started CAFB, I went into it knowing I was a teenager at the time. I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. I knew that I didn't know what I was doing. So I still ended up in a leadership position. I found myself in leadership roles. In high school, it was, the group project by default. It's not a title you want. You don't want to carry that torch, but you end up with it anyway. And it's there. And then I developed the mechanism at that point. I felt like almost, in the Cold War, different tactics that people would be using. I started using shorthand in my notes. So the little pamphlet from on the inside of your math set that you used to get with all the shorthand in there, I used to literally make my English notes and all my other subjects using that shorthand. Nobody ever understood it. And they got so frustrated, they just stopped asking me for my notes. So I was very strategic about it. I just even prevented the need for me to say no and affect my reputation. They got so frustrated, they just said no themselves. So it started there. And then I think the leadership skills, again, starts with your parents and your observation. And like I said, my mother pushed me. There was no such thing as you can't do this. It's you can't do this right now. Or you can't do this with the tools you have. Or you can't do this, maybe with this group or in this setting or in this context. And she would always extend that support with, she never gave me example. She never gave me the meaning of a word when I was a child. You have no idea how frustrating that was. I had a little kid's dictionary. She had the real thing. And so I would go to her if the word wasn't in my kid's dictionary. I'd be like, Mom, what's the meaning of this word? I'm reading it in a book. She would give me her dictionary and say, please go write this in your dictionary. Next time, don't ask me, just do this. And it was painful at the moment, but it was something that I learned, okay, we need to make time and space and resource available for when other people who are led by me have that same issue. You need to explain the process to them. You need to tell them where to go, what to do, set them up in a way that they can go through the process smoothly and arrive at the desired result, which is what she did. It was like, okay, come on, the dictionary is there. You know what to do. You know how to spell the word, alphabetical order. Why are we having this conversation? And so that's kind of the first leadership trait. The second leadership trait, I think, from my father was integrity. And everybody has, their strengths and weaknesses and the areas of strength and weakness in life. Life is about so much more than your job. And with my father, he brought a very different layer of integrity into the business environment. He was consulting at that time, as a chartered accountant, and he worked himself up. And people would go to him because they knew when he made a decision, he put a lot of thought into it. He considered all the angles, all of the risks, and then came to a decision. And the decision he came to was an informed decision where he was aware of the risks and willing to take them on. It fit in with his risk appetite. And so lots of people kind of modeled off of him. And I think I did too. I haven't always been the best at it, but I think I'm getting better now. I'm definitely better now than I was 10 years ago when I started a brand. Leading people gave me severe imposter syndrome in the beginning. I mean, I was leading people 3 times my age, which, like you said, culturally is like, this person's doing something wrong. But do I have the ability to go and say, hang on, we need to, course correct. So definitely, as I worked, so I always did CAFB on the side. I was studying full time and did CAFB on the side. Once I graduated with my BA in corporate communication, I was working in an internship in FMCG. And at that time, I was still commuting to Cape Town, still running a fashion show every year. And I found that good things, my manager at the FMCG company said, she didn't believe that people needed to feel grateful for a job. They were selected because of their skill set, their experience, and what they could give to the company. There was absolutely no, it was transactional. Nobody should have felt grateful for a job. And she finds that she was British. And so she used to frustrate her, that people had this emotional attachment to employment in South Africa. But I also understood she didn't get it. She didn't know what it was like to wake up in the morning at 3:00, take 2 buses and a taxi, wait at the rank, wait for the company transport, and then work a 12-hour shift, still have to go and have a shower on site, do all the health and safety stuff, then go, you must run because the taxi is going to leave you. Okay. Get into this crowded taxi, still have to go take those 2 buses. You're getting off not at your door. You're not parking in your garage like your manager is. You must still get out, walk. Okay. And like I used to do that with my mother, take the bus to go to Warwick Street Market, go and get groceries. I knew the pain. Even when I was a college student, I used to have to walk at least 1.2 Ks to the grocery store, could only carry so much and come back and walk up 3 flights of stairs to get, to my apartment. There's an appreciation that I think some leaders lack. They don't put themselves in the shoes of their employees and say, what is it like to be a mother? If I'm not a mother and I have a lot of spare time and I can sit and work and I can be online at 8 p.m., is it really fair for me to expect that from my direct reports? How it translates into our team now is, although we have working hours from 8 to 5, I'm flexible. I set the targets and then get out of their way and check into support, and that's it. So my staff know, hey, if you're not feeling well, please don't be online. If it's a public holiday, I don't want to see you online. You will get into trouble with me. Like, we will have this conversation where I am telling, why are you online? This is not okay. We don't even speak to clients most of the time before 10 a.m. I have one special client that I really love working with that's in a different time zone. So at the moment I'm on calls a bit early, but my team, I don't put my staff onto those calls. That's a decision I'm making, right? And so I don't want to have calls before 9 o'clock with my team. I want them to get settled, have the morning coffee. Mom has to go drop kids at school. By the time you come back into the house, you need to get bread and milk on the way back now. And, all of those things, just kind of get settled, get your head in the right space, and then we can continue. So that's one way. Some of the managers as well, just in terms of timing. So I had a manager in my career that used to come in at 3:30 in the afternoon and give me the full day's worth of work and expect it by 8 a.m. the next morning. Wow. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And it was ironic. I mean, people also, just because of my surname and who my dad is, people who know my surname, it's a really unique surname. And they know who my dad is. So they always ask, am I related to this person? And I'm like, I can't get away from this man's reputation. So there's another reason, female, culturally, we have that weight. Everybody knows who your dad is. So that's a barrier. Sometimes that's why I chose marketing and not accounting, but still can't get away from it. So with that situation, the CFO of that company had been trained actually by my dad. My dad had helped a couple of students pass their psycha board exams. He used to do tutoring. And it was so weird because my boss, and I was questioning, SDL was being deducted, but it wasn't on my payslip. And I was questioning it. And again, for everyone who's watching this, you're not going to find it on my LinkedIn. It's not going to be anywhere. Good luck. I'm never gonna, go and give details and stuff. But you need to go through this experience, because also, guys, check your payslips, please, everybody. Know what's being deducted, ask questions about those numbers. And again, it wasn't being declared, but SDL was being deducted from my cost of company. And I just I realized, I was like, no, I'm not going to try and make these people happy. The ethos is not aligned with me. And the guy ended up asking me, was your dad an accountant? He didn't know who my dad was, but he asked me, is your dad an accountant? And it was a euphoric moment. And I said, you should probably ask your CFO. I laughed in his face. It was my last day anyway. I wasn't hurting anyone. I laughed in his face. I said, you should have that conversation with your accountant. On that note, have better places to be. And I'm going to leave you guys to enjoy the rest of your day. Again, no bitterness, no hard feelings. I walked out of the office, shut the door, went to go get my bag from my desk. And the whole company is just staring at me from 360 degrees. I had people, it's an open plan office, staring at me. And I said my goodbyes. And the weird thing there also is that I connected better with the tea lady than I did with some of the professionals. I just felt, human beings actually understand human beings. you're not better than anybody because of the role you have and the degree you have and all of that. You're a human. You're just as fallible as any of us. And so I've made it my effort to also treat people who are at operational level and give them a sense of value and pride in what they do, that they feel like they are leaders in their little universe. You should always feel like a big fish, no matter what size pond you are thrown in. You should always feel confident and, comfortable to tackle things on. And if you don't feel that way, come and ask, come and say, oh, I'm not, I'm confused. I always say to the guys, stick your hand up and say, help. I don't know what I'm doing, because it's not fatal. It really isn't. And if it is fatal, if there is something apocalyptic that is going to happen because you make a mistake, then I have failed as a leader. I have either overpromised, I've not managed my time appropriately, I've over or undercharged, like I have not measured the risk well enough when I made the commitment as the leader and obviously as a chief salesperson in my business. One day, somebody else will be responsible for that, and there will be processes, check the risk before you make the sale. So things like that. Process is a big part of mitigating and overcoming the kind of leadership shortfalls that I see a lot of people falling prey to.
Interesting. So, okay, we have a few more questions.
No problem.
Awesome. So from a leadership standpoint, now the company is growing. Pretty soon, it's not like you're going to be able to effectively have this almost one-to-one relationship with the people on your team. Now there's a bit of structure coming in.
Yes.
There's a bit of like some operations and processes that are now creeping in. So obviously you'll find yourself in that odd space where perhaps there's a process that should probably come in, but it's not there right now and you kind of need it right now, but it's not currently there. How are you actually managing that? Like, how are you managing that point where now your business is probably starting to need a lot more structure, which you only realize this when the structure isn't there and something perhaps falls through the cracks. How are you managing that?
I think the first thing is to take accountability and to own it. Whether it's directly with the clients, so like I've had conversations with clients that they're easy because, you manage a relationship. You also know your clients, you know what your clients will understand, what they won't understand, and how to manage. I think it comes with the nuance of being trained in communication and then obviously having now 10 years of experience in formally practicing that. But I think the other thing is also we have a process in our business where I review the state of the company every 3 months. So, like how we have a state of the nation address. Yeah. And every 3 months, I have a look at what's happening in marketing, sales, operations, finance, admin, HR. I have outsourced HR and finance. So I have an outsourced CHRO. I have an outsourced CFO. And I take advice from the people who I know are the best at what they do. I will look for them and wait for the right person to come along. I used to make the mistake of just taking anyone and want to, give an opportunity to a young person, a young graduate. Sometimes that was just the biggest mistake, hiring out of desperation, worrying about coming from a place of scarcity with regards to how am I going to fund this person's paycheck. I wasn't mature enough in how I thought about marketing and my own work and my own value. Today, I'm sitting, on the other side of having done a lot of therapy, a lot of courses, specific courses around mindset, around human value, having absorbed so much more content and information and knowledge, having engaged with people, having experience in people management, that today, a lot of the issues we used to have with that, with implementing structure, we don't have it now. I've had some conversations with clients as well who also appreciate that I just don't do ad hoc turnaround. I will not do last minute turnaround. I don't like it. I won't do it. It's not aligned with the lifestyle that I'm trying to build for myself, for the happy lifestyle that I want for my team. I want a happy team because they will be productive and they will produce a profitable enterprise at the end of the day. Long after I have closed my eyes, I hope that this brand will be sustained by good people who live with integrity, discipline, and respect. And so I have to work towards that from now. I have to plan for that from now. I'm not going to live forever. And what will I have given the world once my life is over? It's a very big, important question. And I do think about it practically daily, sometimes twice a day. It's my waking moments. It's my moments when I fall asleep, as I think, oh my God, one day all of this is just not going to exist for me. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I need to be prepared for that. And I need to do my best to prepare other people who are a part of my life now for that. It's not even just about the emotional side. It's making sure that we have a job to do here. We are playing a big role in the success of other people. That is such a high privilege. It's the way I see it. It's the way, I view that it's a reward. To be a part of someone else's success is it's a highly ordained privilege. I don't take it for granted. When a client signs on, a client's not closing a deal with me. A client is entrusting me with the success of their business. They are investing in me. They are taking a chance in me, my team, my experience, what I can bring to the table. Yeah. They are making their budget available for us to make magic with. It's a massive responsibility, and we take it seriously and we treat it with respect and dignity. And I have policies in place where if I am late to deliver, I shave a portion out of my invoice. I am happy to take that hit. My prices are so low, but I will take that hit because it's a matter of integrity. And me not being able to deliver what I promise has a consequence for me. And it's the easiest way to show it is actually to say to people, I will shave a portion of the invoice. I'm not doing this to kind of, strip you bare. And I want your business to succeed. And I'm sorry that it's late. I take accountability for that. And data is available if you'd like to discuss the reasons why. I always provide a reason why, at least just in one sentence, hey, I've had some personal setbacks. It affected the business and it shouldn't have. And these are the processes that we're putting in place. But every quarter, we're going to do it at a detailed level. And my intention is actually now change over March, April. So kind of in the calendar year, Q1 to Q2, my intention is also just to update each client and say, this is the kind of, we've monitored our relationship together in the last 3 months. This is kind of what's not working for us. Give me as brutally honest feedback as you want about what's not working for you. Give me that feedback so I can go and make some changes, and hopefully that'll create a better experience for you. I want to do that every quarter. I don't just want to wait until someone reaches a point of frustration, because not every client thinks the way I think. And that's why I'm also in their team now, right? They've appointed me because I do think differently. And so I have to respect that. I feel I must respect that. That's a standard I set. So yeah, I think that's really the long and the short of it. That's how we do it. It's about continual improvement, continual optimization. You don't stop. You just want to be better each and every day. And if that filters down in the way that you speak, the way you think, the way you behave, fine. Knowing that you go into an engagement and saying, guys, I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. I'm just like you. There's nothing special about me. I look like you. I'm sitting here in my dining room. You literally, I'm working from home. You see my dining room like that. That's it. I'm not special. I'm not, some kind of miracle worker or whatever the case is. But people think that about me sometimes because it's a consistency. There's a 10-year track record to go and look at. There's 10 years worth of mistakes and responses to them that people can go and verify. And the funniest thing is when I spoke to one of my contractors and then my intern, we were having virtual coffee one of the weeks, and they were having this conversation about social media research and like how they stalk people online when they first hear about them and stuff. And I said, geez, you guys are scaring me. Did you stalk me before we worked together? And both of them in unison said, yes, that's why we work with you. And I was blown away by it, because I thought, I don't know how much is out there about me, but we've been working a long time to promote other people, and maybe that's visible online. So maybe what's available online, the breadcrumbs, they've all point in the direction that I've always been trying to position myself as a person of integrity, discipline, and respect.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I really like the idea that the way in which you take into account the fact that your clients are actually trusting you, and it's one of the things that I think I've actually done a video about this. I'm like, we tend to actually forget that there isn't a hiring manager that sets out to hire the wrong person. Like it reflects badly on them. Like, and often when you have the opportunity to actually be a part of teams or a part of organizations, you tend to forget that you're a part of someone's dream. Like someone has actually trusted you with a key aspect of their dream. Like, especially if you're working for a small business and whatever, more often than not, you get to actually spend time with the founder and whatever else, or perhaps even in a large organization. The hiring manager or your team lead, they also have their own aspirations. They also have their own goals and objectives. And a lot of that hinges on their ability to lead you properly. So we tend to actually forget that. Like, we tend to actually forget the fact that we're dealing with a human being, and they also have their own hopes and dreams, and they also have their reservations that you actually need to take into account when interacting with those individuals. I mean, when a company chooses to do business with you, there's risk involved,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it also reflects badly on them, if things go south. But if things go well, so there is that element of trust. It's like, listen, this isn't just like a financial transaction. We would like it to just be a financial transaction, but it's also a show of trust. Like, I'm actually trusting you to do this. And I think even I did a lot of freelancing years and years ago. A lot of it is actually that, like, a company is actually trusting you with an aspect of their business. And sometimes they don't really know you. All they know is perhaps your portfolio of work or whatever else. And they're like, okay, it sounds like you could do this work. And
correct.
We'll leave you through that. Now, when it comes to actually, because you said that you've got like contractors and, I'm assuming these are like freelancers and whatever else. How do you actually decide on the contractors to work?
So a couple of things. I mean, some of them that go way back with me to CAFB, like to 2013, found them through Gumtree ads. And I just said, hi, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. It's very high risk. I'm a student. I don't know what I'm doing. But if you come and you're a part of this team, this is what I promise to give. This is what I would like to give. And here's how you're going to measure me. Like, I want to be held accountable. I think my pitch is kind of very different to a lot of people, just by nature of my personality being quite unique, and the yardstick, the benchmarks I set for myself. I really kind of, I just trial and error at first. Over the years, I've gotten better. I think being self-aware, more self-confident, more assertive, and able to communicate who I am, what I'm about, what my standards are, what the requisites are for you getting a benefit out of me, knowing that, it's human nature. You're gonna want to ask the question, what's in it for me? I lead with that. And I'm genuine about it. And I also, I do my best to take accountability, right? I think people see that. There are some people who, I'm not going to pretend that I haven't crossed paths with people who really reject my way of thinking. But I've had some kind of customers because they were older than me. Some of the designers or service providers, because they were older than me, try and push me around, talk down at me because, like, I don't know what I'm doing type of thing. And I look at them and I said, look, when we actually did the kickoff for this program, I told you there's one of me, there's 80 of you. How reasonable is it to expect that I devote 24 hours of my life as a student or as a full-time employee, knowing that I don't take a salary out of this? I introduced 100% transparency policy as well. I used to sit with my bank statements and show people what came in, what was going out, before it became a formal company. I mean, even after the company, that's still, the clause still applies. Anyone at any time can come and book an appointment with me and say, I don't feel comfortable about donating for this cause. Can you show me the track records? They are allowed to come in and look at the bank statements with me, and I will show them. Because I'm so intimately involved with who these good people are in my team, I can tell you who we've paid, when, why, for what purpose, which organization we're working with. I've also got it documented. Being an accountant's daughter, right? So there's a whole lot of work, consistent work that's required into building trust. And it happens every day. It happens before the question comes.
Yeah.
So when you're finding people to work with, know that you are going to choose some, I will call them at-risk tomatoes. They don't look rotten from the outside. You wouldn't say no immediately. Yeah. But they're souring on the inside, and they don't belong in your box. And so you find that out once you've put them in there, and then you come back and you see it's affecting some of the other tomatoes, right? My grandfather used to say something to me about rotten tomatoes. He said, people go wash the fruit, put it back in the box, and then it'll rot more of your tomatoes after that. Go pick out the rotten tomato and throw it away. Go and wash what's left. change the container and then put them back.
Yeah.
Like, you need to understand what is rot. Why is it there? What are the conditions causing the rot, and remove that. Like, don't just up and wash the thing and put it into the same box again.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's the definition of wasting time, right?
Yeah.
And so just things like that, I think with all the people that we work with, it has been values-based decisions. It's making sure that, I said to you, I lead with the pitch: integrity, discipline, respect. This is who I am. This is what's okay. This is what's not okay. If you want immediate turnaround and you want people stressing overnight to deliver stuff for you, I'm not your person. My team is not your team. You need to go find that stuff elsewhere, because I will stand up for my team. And I have my team, some of them feel very intimidated or imposter syndrome. So there's one person who's much younger than me by 10 years. God bless her soul. She is the most devoted human being to improving herself. And sometimes it's scary working for someone who's 10 years older than you, feels 20 years older than you, who's achieved so much, is so articulate, and all of these things. It can be really scary when this person gives you an instruction and then to try and go back to the person and say, it's not clear enough. Can you do a better job, please? You have to constantly coach and give back. So I always try and add value first. I find values-based alignment, and I refer to the boundaries. And like I said, I'm open to giving people opportunities, but I have standards, and I set the standards for my life. And if people have an issue with that, they will self-select out of my life. They will weed themselves out because they are not, they're not able to function at that level. And I'm probably more okay with that now than I was 10 years ago at the start of my business journey.
Yeah, amazing. So one of the things I really want to touch on, I would be remiss not to touch on this, is the aspect of personal branding. So when I'm a data scientist, right? I never talk about data on LinkedIn, like ever. But for whatever reason, and I'm actually asking an actual qualified individual, like I have my own notions on why this happens, but hopefully you can actually give me a qualified reason for it. I don't, like, the things that I talk about is generally careers, my thoughts. I'll talk about salaries. I'm like, dude, like, just get paid what you're worth, and whatever else. But what has happened, which was like an unintended consequence, is it's led to more job offers. Like, you'd have recruiters, hiring managers saying, I saw one of the things that you post on LinkedIn. I really like you. Would you be interested in this opportunity? And I've been struggling with that because, like, nothing about what I do shows any level of my competence. And yet you've got companies saying, okay, like, how much are you getting paid? I'm willing to up that. Would you actually make a move? And whatever else. Like, it's reached a point where I'm having to basically give these opportunities out to friends. I'm like, well, I'm not looking to make a move, but I have this friend of mine who was really looking at something and whatever else. I had a similar situation with an insurer, I think towards the end of last year, ended up giving that to a friend of mine. So I find myself in that situation. What actually is happening from a marketing standpoint and a personal branding standpoint? Why does that happen? Because this is like an unintended consequence for me personally. What would you say about it?
Happened with me too. It happened with me too. So at a point where I was really happy, my previous employer, it's an agency, I was really happy there, started posting some content, experimenting with LinkedIn, and then got job offers in the UK for marketing manager positions and stuff. And I would discuss them with my boss at the time and say, and I realized now in hindsight, obviously, like, discussing a potential job offer with your boss would get their heart rate up if you're a high performer and they don't want to lose you. But at the time, and I'd be like, isn't your husband's in recruitment and isn't he supposed to be doing this? Know anyone? Because I don't know, I just randomly got approached by this. And yes, kind of applying communication and marketing background, you realize what's happening. Fact checking is not something that a lot of people are into. Recruiters are incentivized by the placement, the act of the placement. They're not incentivized by how long an employee stays. So like, I know very few, but some recruitment companies kind of base their fee on the biggest reward being if this employee that they place reaches the 1 year mark.
Okay.
That's actually giving a damn about placing someone for the long haul with this business and saying this is the right, absolute right person for you. It's not just, oh, matching a set of skills, face value, kind of watching TV. What's on the screen at the moment? I'll think about it then. And then the next ad will play and then I'll think about that, right?
Yeah.
That's an approach to recruitment. That's one thing that's happening. Second thing that's happening is you are sending signals. You are showing who you are. And I literally just did a talk earlier today in a networking session about it, where I said, people are going to judge you anyway. It's there, it's online, it's public access. People are going to judge you anyway. You may as well use that to curate this brand, this positioning, this messaging, who you are, what they think about you. Use all of the tools on your LinkedIn. And one of the key components we spoke about was actually that activity. How active are you on LinkedIn? And it's not just about what you post, it's the comments you add. It's a value, it's a debate, it's a challenge, it's a resource you share. That defines more about who you are, because, you know, they say the actions speak louder than words. Those are the actions you take. You don't see it that way, and you don't have that intention. Maybe, you know, when you are posting and you are putting something out there, you're sharing your thoughts about something work or business related.
Yeah.
What somebody else is seeing is, you know, okay, it's a light bulb moment. Here's somebody who understands people or who understands this. And they come to your profile and they look at what you have on display. It's like walking through a market, stopping at a specific stall. Now you actually see what this person has. Yeah. What brought you there could have been this person calling out and you heard them on the other side of the market and you thought you heard, you know, it was like, I don't know, 3 kgs of tomatoes for 10 rand. It's a good deal. You come down and you're like, okay, what's here? Now you discover this person has green beans and potatoes and onions, and there's so much more to offer. So it's a use of your profile. If you're using your profile and you're using the tool and the application appropriately, it changes what people see about you. Because one comment you leave on, I don't know, let's just say Business Day does an article, right? And they publish it, and you go and you challenge. I've done this recently. Somebody published an article, a report where less than 2,000 people were surveyed, but apparently that represents the whole of South Africa's opinions. And it's, the actual quality of the research was so poor that I challenged it on LinkedIn and I said, I'm sorry, but this is pathetic. It really is. That's my opinion. And I'm sharing it here because you've grouped together 2 distinctly different channels. Now you're saying with certainty, this represents South Africa's choices. People are going to come and look at your article and use this as a reference to put budget behind campaigns and fail miserably. Exactly. Because you have produced absolutely poor quality research and put it out there. That is disgusting. You have not thought about, you know, I was a little bit nicer when I said it, but like you've not thought about the influence you have in this decision-making process. Don't just do it because somebody needed to get a report out. Somebody needed to, like a junior, it looked like a junior was put on this, no resource, no guidance, no research methodology, nothing. And especially not intelligence from a data point of view. How are we collecting the data? Are we validating the email addresses? Do we know if anyone's put in more than one response? There was no disclaimer to say how the data was collected. There wasn't even, there were screenshots, but there was no link to a dashboard that I could find to actually touch the data. So I questioned it and I said, well, what the hell? I mean, this is not useful to somebody like me, who's a fractional CMO, who's going to put budget behind campaigns because of references. You're a reputable URL, you know. I don't even remember the name of this company, and I wouldn't say it if I did. I mean, obviously, you know, protect them, but that kind of thing is important. And so people don't understand the impact of every little thing they do. You know, Obama said, if it's not fit to go in the newspaper, don't send the email. Yeah. I mean, that stuck with me. Yeah. It'll stick with me for the rest of time.
That's very true. So from a marketing standpoint and from a personal branding standpoint, if someone is actually trying to build their careers and they're trying to actually get their names out there, perhaps so that opportunities will come in and all of that, what advice would you give them in terms of actually doing that? How would they actually go about that?
Step 1, use all of the sections on your LinkedIn profile that you can. Step 2, be very careful what you do choose to highlight on your profile, because not everything is additive to your reputation. Like, for example, I said some companies I didn't mention. Every possible mention of that company, even when I worked for them and I would tag them in posts and stuff like that, I've deleted everything, because any even historical association with a certain company could actually drag my current reputation down. And sure, that's not what those people might want to hear, but it's a hard reality. It just is, because their management style detracts and subtracts from what I'm trying to put forward with my brand, that I'm a person of integrity, discipline, and respect. So be very careful, and it's okay if you choose to leave something out. You're curating a journey. You don't owe LinkedIn and the LinkedIn community every little detail about your life. One of those things where it's not like it's detrimental or anything, but I can say, like we spoke about when I studied architecture, I completed 75% of that degree, but I haven't listed it on my profile. I haven't even said, I have this and it's incomplete. I've just said I've got my BA in corporate communication. And where my strengths lie is that I've been a founder of a brand, of two brands. Actually, I founded three brands. One I co-founded with a partner, but these two brands that I have founded, it happened years ago. I have staying power. I'm not going to leave you. Things are going to get rough. I'm not going to leave you. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to commit. I'm going to do my best to go out for that. So look for the consistency and look for the signals that each section of your LinkedIn really provides. The third thing is make use of resources. So like frames, if you're open to work, use the open to work. I think somebody custom made an open for business frame as well. It's a little yellow one. Since the Great Resignation and more freelancing and things like that happening. So use those frameworks. I think that the overall approach to personal branding, also think outside of LinkedIn. Think outside of LinkedIn, because you need to remember, a person using the internet, you have one person, multiple devices. You have multiple people also using one device, like a family computer. You have a lot of different methods for people to find information. There's also word of mouth. When people are going to Google, sometimes video results will come up. So you really need to be mindful. You almost need to put yourself through Google and see, does your LinkedIn come up first? Yes, LinkedIn may be a resource, but it's got to be consistent with what else is there. So, when my staff were telling me they stalked me, they saw the same thing on the website, the same thing on the Facebook page, the same thing on, the Instagram, same thing on Twitter. They got to see all of that. So it adds credibility and consistency. So when you're running your personal brand, don't forget that there are multiple channels.
That's interesting. Okay, so my final question. It's amazing. That's almost been 2 hours. And I really like this question because I think a lot of people are doing some interesting work. And so the question itself is more idealistic, but it really gives a bit of insight into what people actually care about. So you've got absolute power in South Africa. Absolute. And whatever you decide to do is what happens then. So the power is actually absolute and it happens right then and there. What 3 things would you actually do that would be for the benefit of everyone else in South Africa, but it shouldn't be towards you directly?
First thing, completely reform education in this country.
Yes.
I don't believe that tertiary should be free if primary and pre-primary are not free.
Yeah.
If you haven't learned and passed and absorbed knowledge at that level, no amount of free tertiary education is going to help your soul.
Yeah.
Change education, change the system. Know that education is not just about sitting in a classroom.
Yeah.
There are so many ways to absorb knowledge and to learn. Even trade schools are such a good example. They're underfunded in this country because people have such skill working with their hands, but they don't have resources, right? You sometimes find that in certain communities, sadly, it is only schools for special needs that encourage working with trades. That contributes to the undermining of trade workers in this country.
Yeah.
Also, including in terms of mindset, making it mandatory that education should include something around mental health and mindset. We do have life orientation. However, nobody teaches you how to file a tax return. Nobody really they teach you about personality types, I think. They teach you about different kind of profiles. Nobody actually kind of looks and says, what's the application of that in my life? Oh, I'm this personality type. Maybe that's why I am always panicking about delivering assignments on time. That's something I've learned about myself. That's interesting. Like awaken and I do this already from an education point of view in the businesses, right? I try and I impart it, but definitely change everything there is to change about education.
Yeah.
It's not just about the subjects. Stop giving other countries the power to make decisions in our country. Just don't do it, you know? I mean, like, we go through elections for a reason. We are South Africans. We deserve the right to make these decisions. And I'm not in any way against employing people from outside South Africa, but do that in the private sector. Encourage that in small business and the private sector. So I would change the way that we educate and employ, right? Employment as well. I think if I had the power to do this, you say absolute power. Not that I would want to take rights away from people, but this is going to be highly controversial. If you have a tax number, your vote counts a little bit more.
Okay.
That money, that outcome of the decision of that vote influences what happens with the money you work for. If you are working 2 or 3 jobs contributing to SARS, more of your money, more of your life is being disrespected by poor management decisions at a government level.
Yeah.
So if you are contributing to that pot, I do believe that you should get an extra say, just a little bit. It's not to say that, you know, people don't matter because they're unemployed or because they're not paying a tax or whatever the case is. I do believe everybody's life has equal value. I don't believe that everybody's entitled to social welfare because we're making 350 Rand available. Everybody in this country has something of value that they can contribute for their own lives, their own families, their own society. We need to develop more resources that help people realize that in their context, not up here. Not everybody's functioning up here. We've got to get down to that level, and it starts at education. The school system is the best portal to effect change. Everybody knows the kids have to go to school. That's where the change starts. And I think for me, so like I say, change education, employment. The third thing I would change is healthcare. You know, in terms of the quality of our practitioners, removing the ridiculous expectations. You know, people of a certain skin color can get into med school with 60% averages. People of another skin color need 98% averages. That for me is, it's not equitable, because we also then why are we not just employing more lecturers, and those who want to study medicine, make it an equal bar, actually have more education available, more quality education available for more people here to study and become doctors and to become specialists. Help these people, stop turning them away. They want to help. The Hippocratic Oath, I mean, there's nothing for me more of service and servitude than that. First, do no harm. You don't have to, I mean, and doctors do this, you know, even in the private hospitals, you're not allowed to refuse a treatment, life-saving treatment to somebody coming into your ER just because they don't have a medical aid. If someone's come in with a gunshot wound, you have to save their life. That's an oath you took when you became a doctor. Why the hell are we limiting people from taking that oath? They want to serve their communities. It doesn't make sense to me. Why? Because of politics and bureaucracy. If you know that more people and a different kind of diversified community wants to apply for medicine and learn medicine, introduce bridging courses. You know, kids who take maths lit in high school, you can do a bridging course and you can get into then a maths requirement program. It's a little bit longer, but if, you know, these kids want to be doctors, they will do what they need to do. Stop limiting people's ability to contribute to society. How the hell else are we going to actually move forward if we keep placing barriers in people's path? You know, it should be up to us to employ more lecturers, to go and make sure that there are more medical staff trained, that we incentivize the best graduates to come back and tutor juniors and undergrads, that we incentivize the best of the best in this country to come and give back, because they're the best people to do so. We should be kind of reinvest in quality in terms of healthcare. And it goes through education, through employment, but it's the whole healthcare sector. It needs a different approach dramatically.
That to me is the perfect way to end this. Prenessa, thank you so much for the time. Like, that was, I really enjoyed this. I really hope we can have this again, have the sit down again. I think there's like so much that we actually didn't get to. But we don't want to turn this into like a Joe Rogan experience of like 4 hours or something. So yes, thank you so much for this time. And really, I appreciate this. Like, I learned a lot. Like not just like in terms of editing, I'm gonna go back to this. Some of the things that you said really stuck out for me as well. And it was really helpful. You know for a fact that you've helped at least one person because you helped me. So,
thank you. I really, really appreciate that, Tabi. So it's been lovely to just kind of sit back and relax and really go into detail of these things. There's not a lot of people do what you're doing. And I think that for all the people out there who watch, I've watched a couple of these episodes as well, in build up to preparing for today's conversation. And I think that, more people need what you're doing. So from my side as well, thank you for the opportunity, this beautiful window of opportunity to help people, to share my story. You never know. Like I said, back then, 10 years ago, we prevented a suicide just saying you have a lovely jawline. Who knew? Let's use the opportunity to do this because people need to know they are human first. And there's a lot more that goes into you building a beautiful career for yourself. Not everybody is destined to go into leadership, but you can at least lead your own life. That counts.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Prenessa. Let me not keep you any longer. I really appreciate the time that you gave for this.
Thank you, Tabi. So
cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.